All right, welcome to the channel. Today we'll be talking about the JDS Labs Element IV, which is this black device on this black desk on this black shelf that you probably can't see from this distance. But the JDS Labs Element IV is what we'll be talking about today. This was sent out by JDS Labs. They're not asking me to say or do anything other than my honest opinion regarding this device. In fact, I've had almost zero interaction with them, and they won't see this video before it goes out or anything like that. But TLDR, I'm probably going to request to buy this device directly from them, and or if they want me to send it to the next person, I'm just going to buy it from their website because I think this thing is fantastic. It's in my top 3 all-time like all-in-one desktop audiophile devices. So let's dive into why that is. All right, so right off the rip, let's talk about the build and aesthetic. It's a pretty simple device. It's just a little black box with a really cool volume pot on top. And if you're looking directly like at it and down, on the bottom right section is a little screen that kind of shows you all the, details that you're volume level listening at, words, and all your other stuff. In fact, that little window, you can actually hold down the volume pot and press it down, and it will move to a settings window, and you can go through all the different settings and change it there. And then on the front is I think you can have it either be a 4.4 Pentacon, or you can have it what I have, which is the 6.3. So that's what it is for build and aesthetics. And on the back, sorry, for build, we'll go back into aesthetics in a sec. So for build, also on the back, it has RCA outs, which can then go to what I have here. I have some Atom Audio D3Vs that I use as my desktop speakers. You just do a quick tap down on the volume pot to switch between the front out on the device, which is that 6.3, or you press it down and it goes to RCA outs. And what I have them going to is my Atom Audio desktop speakers. And so fantastic. I love that you can just swap super fast that way. And then another feature of this device as far as build is you can go into the web driver and switch it to UAC1, and then you can use it with like a PlayStation 5 and or other, I think it's mostly PlayStation 5 that uses that UAC1, maybe Xbox too. But you could just, if you have it, you can plug it into that. You can swap it out. Just be aware that if you do that, you have to it causes some finagling, and you're better off just plugging like a pair of powered desktop speakers directly in with USB into the PS5 rather than try to use the Element 4. But it is doable. I found it to be too much of a pain rather than just plugging in the speakers directly. So just something to take into account. And that's pretty much build. All the volume pot itself, I'm going to go into aesthetics for this part of it. Build aesthetic, whatever. We're sticking with it. The volume pot is fantastic. It's one of my favorite aspects of this device, and it stands out, especially with the clear resin one. And it has you can see the little circuit board, and you can see the little LEDs, and the circuit board has all the like writing on it. And I love that aesthetic. It's one of my favorite things. And with that, the volume pot itself is fantastic, and it's not as smooth or as loose as the Element 1, which Nostalgia Play was the first like proper audiophile device, like desktop headphone device that I had, getting into the headphone audio space back in 2015, I think is when it was released, and I loved that thing. I had I think their little tiny stack prior to that, had their like, a couple of like their little plastic one I had, and then their little stacks, the different JDS products from back then, but the Element stood out. Like I loved that thing. I also had the LDAC and the L-amp later on down the road because I thought it would be a better like thing to have them separated. And so I actually gave away my Element, the first version, to a friend with a pair of headphones as a present kind of thing. And mostly just because I knew it would like help him get out of his own head, and it's a good way to relax. And I knew he needed that. So anyhow, Nostalgia Play out of the way. The other factor you can do with the JDS Labs is if you do the black knob volume pot on top, you can actually go into their customs, and you can actually have it etched with like whatever artwork or words or whatever you want on there, which is a really cool feature as well. In fact, my LDAC from way back, I actually had it be a Calvin and Hobbes standing under the stars as a cool etched, and that was like my LDAC etched like artwork that I had on the LDAC, which was sick. And The other factor for aesthetic is it's just simple. It's clean. It's a very simple and joyful device to interact with because it gets out of the way and it's intuitive and I never have to think about what I'm pressing or doing. There's a power button and an input button on the back. That's pretty much it. So there's not much to it unless you really want to dive into it. And then moving into if you do want to get complicated with it, or you do want to dive into more of the settings, you hold down the volume pot and then it switches the setting window. You can go through and change it there. But an easier way to do that is by just going to their web driver. And on their web driver, you have all the options. Plus, you got PEQ, so you want to EQ it, you can. I'm not an EQ guy. I did mess with it, and I changed the bass shelf and got all bassy and whatever. But I always go back to neutral just because that's just how I like to listen to things. I like to listen to them as they are sent to me, I guess, or as they were designed initially, I guess. I don't know what that would be called, but that's generally how I like to listen to my headphones, to speakers, just out of the box, how they were sent, kind of thing. I will mess with things sometimes depending, but generally that's how I listen. So neutral is how I left it for the EQ side of the house, or flat. And the things I did change I really enjoyed was crossfeed. I'd turn on crossfeed and then I'd go into the stage, and then there's normal and wide, and I switched it up to the wide section for the staging, which was great. It made especially for video games, and with speakers too, like it just crossfeed, and with the speakers, especially crossfeed and that wide stage really pumped the speakers into another level. And then with headphones as well, it definitely has that nicer expansiveness, or stage with imaging and detail just gets a little bit wider, a little bit more engaging, I guess, in the sense of like immersion. Sorry, not engaging, immersion, for gaming and stuff. The other factor that I was using in that little web driver thing was just kind of playing with all that stuff, and then you can save it all directly to the device from the web driver. So you don't actually, once you're done, you can close out the web driver and it'll be saved on the device itself, which is really, really cool. And you can save multiple different loadouts, I guess, or like different profiles and loadouts. I've been playing too many video games. And speaking of that, video games, I've been playing a lot of Battlefield 6 with the HFA Dahlia. I'm like pointing, where's that? HFA Dahlia there, and lovely pairing, really great. Moving into the sound of the JDS Labs Element IV, I would say it is this very flat, neutral sound, but not clinical. Like it has life. It has like a naturalness to it without it actually leaning warm or cold or like being too like bright. It's a very elegant sounding sound and it's just flat though. And so it's I love it. It just gets out of the way. Like that seems to be the ethos in general for this device, was it just got out of my way. It let me do whatever I wanted to do when I was doing it regarding like audio side of the house. And it just was easy. It was, for lack of better terms, a joy to use. It was engaging and fun when I needed it to be. Like I just enjoyed, when you do the little volume pot changes and everything like that. It's easy and it gets out of the way. And I really enjoyed it. One negative, it's not really a negative, but I was noticing with the volume pot itself, it doesn't seem as loose as I recall the like Element 1 or the L amp. That one was very like spinny. This one has a more like firm grip on what you're doing. So it's very more tactile in a sense, in that it's stiffer. Like it has a more like direct turning as you go. It's not as like you can't just spin it. And I wonder if that's also to do with the fact that you have to press it down, that has that feature in it. So it adds like a little bit of control. So you need to have that. And also maybe just because they wanted you to have that much more control over your volume pot, and they didn't want someone to like actually hit it and have it go spinning into super loud mode. So, not a big thing. Actually, it's still very, very enjoyable. It's still one of the number one best top volume pots out there, in my opinion. It's really a fantastic device to use. And so back to the sound, listening to all my different headphones, it powered them all very well. In fact, it has this auto gain. Going back to just ease of use, it just gets out of the way, as it has an auto gain based on whatever you have plugged into it, which is great. It just gets out of the way, it moves where it needs to move and lets you just listen, which love that. Fantastic. Let's see. The other thing with it regarding sound, I'd say detail. Sorry, I'm trying to brain racking. But the other factor for this amp DAC all-in-one desktop deal is I really enjoyed like the dynamics of it, like the impact that it has. It has this really lovely detail and imaging, but the dynamics and punchiness of it is really nice. Like it's not going to be blowing your brains out with like super crazy bass or anything like that, but and obviously your headphones and speakers will be more of a factor than this, but it's really dynamic, really punchy, and I love the detail and the imaging. And then especially when you put that wide stage on and the crossfeed, it's just fantastic sounding. I really, really love it. It's kind of, if you were to put it comparatively to my other, like one of my other top favorite all-in-one desktops, which is the Maximus Pietis from Niche. Ugh, getting ahead of myself. Brain, catch up. So the Niche Maximus Pietis, the difference for me in those two is that the Pietis or Maximus has more warmth to it, and it has a little more of a tubey sound, and it has a little bit more of like a holographic sound with it. And whereas the Element 4 has this similar depth and height and stage and all that kind of fun stuff, but I would say that the Maximus does feel a little bit more of that leaning towards that tube sound, which if that's what you're into, that would be the one I'd recommend over the Element 4. That being said, the Element 4 is still probably my top 3 all-in-one desktop amp DACs combos. Just put it on your desk and be happy with it. In fact, I recommend this to a ton of my friends. Anytime someone wants to get into the audiophile world or says, "Oh, I need to get an amp DAC desktop thing," one of my first recommendations is always the JDS Labs stuff, because I think for most people that is all you would ever need for your desktop. Obviously preferences and that kind of thing I'll try to take into account, but and also readily available. Like the Maximus, I highly recommend that, but it's not readily available all the time, whereas the Element is readily available and it sounds fantastic. Both are in my top 3. The other third one that is in the top 3 for me is not necessarily something that I really recommend in general because it's so pricey, but it's the Cord TT2. And right now I think I have that mostly paired with my speaker setups. So, but yeah, neither here nor there. Back to the JDS Labs Element 4. Love this device. I highly recommend it. It's one of this. I love it. Nostalgia play aside, the aesthetics of this, the ease of use, like everything, this adds up to like a 10 out of 10 product, and it's one of my all-time favorites. It still holds today, even with the newer iterations. And in fact, they've just gotten better and better based on my experience with the original to now this 4, and fantastic. Love it. So yeah, well, I guess with that, I'll let everybody have their mornings, afternoons, or evening back. And if you get a chance, go get some time on with the JDS Labs Element 4. And if you don't, and you're just kind of trying to gauge something like that, it's definitely worth the price that they have it for. It's a fantastic device, and like I said, easily recommend it. And I'll let everyone have their morning, afternoon. Cheers.